How are you?
Hi, lovely to
Hi,
meet you. Thank you
same
so
here.
much for joining us today, Bhumika. I just wanted to just do a little bit of an introduction, if that's okay, and then you can obviously come in and do your fabulous introduction, and then we can have a chat, if that's okay. But in terms of the Live at 5 that I do every week, welcome everyone for joining us. I mean, we've got a great session ahead. I'm really pleased to have Bhumika join us today, as always. The session is all about learning from incredible people in our community and hearing some real life stories from those that are working in the Salesforce ecosystem. I'm absolutely delighted to share with you and to introduce our community champion for today. And that is Bhumika Udani. And Bhumika is a very highly experienced, I should say, Salesforce practitioner and architect with a career in the ecosystem spanning back since 2009. Wow. She's built expertise working within regulated industries where compliance, governance, and precision are absolutely critical. And her work focuses on leading large-scale Salesforce implementations, including big bang deployments and global multi-cloud rollouts. Roll that off my tongue. There are complex programs that require both strong technical leadership and strategic vision. And Bhumika brings experience across multiple clouds. So she does Salesforce Cloud, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Experience Cloud, and Health Cloud. So a real great mix to bring you today. She's also recognised within Supermums as a champion within our community, particularly through her work through Supermums as a Salesforce and Experience Cloud champion, also Service Cloud, which is obviously our topic today. And what really stands out is her ability to balance scale, complexity, business value, and helping organizations transform how they operate while still staying compliant. So, Bhumika, it's great to have you with us today. I'd love to start by asking you to introduce yourself in your own words and tell us a little bit more about your journey in the Salesforce ecosystem.
Lynn, after the great introduction that you've given, I think there's barely anything left for me to cover. But thank you very much for having me today. It's fantastic. I enjoy my time with Supermoms, whether it's meeting you in these community events or talking to you today or even mentoring your mentees in the regular weekly connects. Like you said, I've been in Salesforce ecosystem since 2009. I started as an early joiner with Accenture. I was a developer, and then over a period of time, I've kind of moved on with my expertise, build the skills that are necessary to kind of keep up with Salesforce releases. And while doing that, I started enjoying the multi-cloud rollouts that happen within the Salesforce digital programs, digital transformation, and now focusing towards the agentic AI era. And I've had the opportunity to work in an environment which is always under heavy compliance and audit. So think of healthcare, think of telecom, think of insurance, think of construction. So Salesforce stops just being a platform, but it becomes a regulatory backbone for the business processes to make sure that whenever the auditors arrive knocking at the door, they have the relevant artifacts necessary to say this. Yes, we have taken our due diligence. We have made sure that things are being executed in the manner that we agreed upon when the audits were conducted.
That's great. I mean, it's great, just to hear, since 2009, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, you must have seen a huge amount of change. What originally drew you to Salesforce, and what changes have you seen over the years?
That's an interesting story. This was never a planned move. I consider myself an accidental Salesforce practitioner. I just graduated. We sort of got employed with Accenture through my campus placements, and I was very young, and I was newbie, almost like an intern when I started getting engaged with the projects. And I met a very lovely lady who introduced me to Salesforce World of Things, and she informed me that we'll give you all the details necessary for you to get onboarded. We'll set you up with the right training and materials that you might need to execute. So a lot of that was thanks to her and on the job learning. I got an opportunity to work with tremendously talented colleagues. What changed since I have joined is the scope. I started as a developer. Most of my time was being heavily focused towards Apex, Visual Force, customizations, building things. And the common question that I kept answering over and over again is, how am I building it? Now it's like, are we building the right thing? Are we sure we want to build this? And are we sure we will stay compliant when this is going out 2 years later on? So for me, the journey has been really enriching and rewarding. Salesforce as a platform has also evolved from the time that it was, and now with Hyperforce coming in, it has also enhanced the features that it shares off the shelf, that allows these companies and these enterprises to stay compliant while also maximizing on their business process efficiencies.
Great, great. And you've worked, I know, extensively in regulated industries. And for those who might not be familiar, because obviously we have a very amount of people that watch this, can you explain what these environments are more complex when implementing Salesforce?
So for me, the major differentiator has been the aspect where there is a consequence tied to it. Any changes that you make has a consequence. So when you talk about an implementation or a refactor, it can be an easy rollback without anybody, or without the need to inform anybody, any third party outside your own organization. But with regulated industries, all of these consequences have to be documented. Every decision that you've taken, every rollback plan that you might have, has to be made and surfaced in the manner that when there is an audit carried out by an external third party, you are able to say that we did the right thing, we followed the right processes. So, in terms of the architecture, even if there is a redesign, it's just a rework. But in case of regulated industries, that rework can mean there could be a fine, there could be a compliance oriented ban which might stop a particular business product from being live in a particular market, or you might have to change your go to market strategy or delay it by another 12 months until you become compliant from a platform perspective. So holistically, as a platform, it's not just the implementation. You have to look at the architecture, the sharing and the visibility architecture becomes extremely critical. It's not just about who can see what, but we have to prove it to the auditor that only the right people are able to see it. So your data residency, retention policies, all of that has to be designed from the very beginning of the program, and it cannot be something that you will revisit towards the go live or go to market time period. Release management also needs to be in a place where it is auditable. You should be having a rollback plan before you even go live. And these are the nuances that separate it out from a non-regulated platform scaling in comparison to a regulated industry platform scaling.
That's great. And, I heard you saying before, you've led some huge big bang deployments, and global multi-cloud rollouts. And, just thinking about a question for you, which would be the most challenging types of projects? For example, what are the different key considerations when delivering Salesforce solutions at that scale across different clouds, like sales experience and health cloud?
So let me answer the first part of the question. I'll talk about so yes, because we work in an industry which is a tech-oriented, solution-oriented, setting up a system. At a personal level, one of my challenging areas of implementing Salesforce is when you talk about merger and acquisition. So you have an enterprise which, just like Salesforce has acquired a lot of companies, I also have had the experience of working in an enterprise setup where these companies have also in turn acquired smaller companies, and then you want to unify their Salesforce platform as an ecosystem. And that's one of the most challenging projects for me personally, your projects or the programs, because while yes, there are two substantial Salesforce environments that needed to be unified under a common brand name, it also needs to be done under a very hard regulatory deadline. You might be operating under a different model, different security setup. The ways of working that are embedded within those platforms might be different. So from the technical problem perspective, these are solvable problems. What gets it's more challenging is the teams who had built them from scratch are now suddenly having to part with that implementation. You have to hand over the reins to somebody who's completely new to you, who may not know the business the way you do, who don't speak the same language that you
Of
do.
course.
So I had to lead with a lot of empathy. I had to also do a lot of trust building exercise with them, make them understand that we are with you in your program. We are with you to scale it up, and we will work along with the culture that you have built in.
Yeah.
And that sort
Sorry.
of helps me move away from just being a technical person to being a person who's actually solving a problem while bringing the team and people together.
Yeah, and I'm sure you solve many problems. So it's always great to hear that as well. And, when you're working across multiple regions and teams and cloud products, how do you ensure consistency while you're still working, for local and industry specific requirements as well?
That's a very interesting question, and this is, I think, a very undermined lens or an aspect as to how do you do it. Like it's such a complex, but just by the nature of the way it operates. For me, my approach has been very straightforward. I always look at what are the genuine non-negotiables globally, and they always almost come down to the security model. What is your compliance requirement structure looking like? What are the integration standards? Data architecture being important. Your data residency, sovereignty. What are your archiving needs that are required for a particular? And this also differ based on the industry, while it also changes depending upon the cloud. Once I have the clarity of these non-negotiable, then it helps me to separate out from something that is being made as a preference rather than a policy. Within that global foundation for enterprises, the local teams are expected to have a certain range of flexibility, not from the sense of operations, but because a particular region might have a different operating needs. For example, UK has an FCA requirement for any insurance broker to be certified to be a service agent, but that might not be relevant for the European counterparts for the same insurance company. So we need, for me, it becomes mandatory to look at it from that lens and also build in that flexibility that allows them to stay separated, but it is still operating under the same platform lens, under the same data architecture, data model that gets shared across with their own security layer on top of it.
Yeah, and I think across all these clouds, and a customer and user experience is key. But from your perspective, what separates a good Salesforce implementation from a great one?
This is a question we should all ask when we start working on a Salesforce platform exercises, because
Definitely.
the answer to is the key, whether you are going to be the kind of platform where people look forward to logging in, or the kind which is going to be sitting in the background and just as a checklist item. Good implementation works. My personal experience that defines as a great implementation is it makes people doing their job a little bit much easier. uh, the end users who are using it, they are able to have success in a measurable manner and an increased
Yes.
measure of it. So they look forward to it, they are able to do their day-to-day activities in much less friction. They are able to continue providing an excellent customer service in terms of if it's a service cloud implementation. And whenever they're approaching these conversations with their end customers as an enterprise or a company representative, they have the best tools in hand to dispose those services or to respond to those questions or to respond to their queries. The specific test that I usually apply is, does this particular solution reduce the cognitive load on the person that's going to use it? Or am I just moving the complexity from one platform to another, or maybe I'm just moving it from Salesforce to another SAP or another ERP system? Uh, Specifically, because it's a regulated industry lens, you need to understand whether it's an insurance or a, say, for example, a insulin pump manufacturer. The kind of customers who these enterprise agents deal with are real people with real situations. They come in with a very high pressure conversations. They expect something to be solved while they are on the phone. So it means that even agent who is going to use Salesforce needs to have all of these details surface in the least frictional manner, at the right time and while staying compliant with their PII, HIPAA, GDPR compliances. So for me, it becomes important to have an architecture that is going to support them solve the customer problem in the least frictional manner, and it
And I
eliminates
think,
the friction overall.
of course, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, with such complex programs, there's always going to be challenges. Can you share one of the biggest challenges you've faced during a global rollout and what you learned from it is always a good thing to ask you.
Absolutely. My lessons have been tremendously rewarding. I think there has been no two problems which were similar. One of the problems that comes to my mind is when Salesforce switched over from Classic to Lightning, and I was
Yeah.
working with an enterprise customer which was into healthcare OEM, original equipment manufacturer, and they already had Salesforce set up in a manner which was compliant to a localization need of a particular region in Asia, Russia, for example. But when the switchover happened from Classic to Lightning, there was no solution available that was going to help them stay compliant, which meant there will be a heavy regulatory fine that could eat up their two
Yeah.
quarters earnings just from a region, and can be a potential ban
Oh,
for
wow.
operating in that region. So what happens is what started as a technical problem at that point in time, that we are not able to support a particular encryption needs or localization needs, ended up going through a 6 to 8 month turnover, complete solution revamping, including an additional
Oh,
solution being brought in for infrastructure needs, going through the whole procurement life cycle. So as an architect, it exposes me to what are the nuances beyond your just surface level solution. You have to also consider from the perspective that when you are bringing in a new solution, and Salesforce at that point in time was not yet live with Hyperpose, which means I had to first of all get the solution supported on Salesforce platform, and also customize Salesforce to be in a place where it is interoperable and integrated with the third party solution. And Salesforce wasn't providing any out of the box capabilities at that point in time, which meant we went through almost 2 months of build cycle with a lot of trial and error. And we were not focusing on just one set of users. We also had a partner portal implemented, which means you had an experience cloud where you had a different audience altogether, who were your retailers and distributors and partners who were expected to log in. They should also have the same compliance regulation followed as your internal employees who are working off that particular product for the sales and service and the marketing needs. So to having to build a solution that is going to stay compliant with all of these areas, 3 clouds, 6 different types of personas, has to be my most challenging one at the moment. But that opened up an understanding of there could be different layers of solution that you can provide. One you can provide at your platform level, one is at an infrastructure level, and one is at application layer level. So for me, as an architect, it helps me understand and isolate the problem statement so that I'm able to come up with a way of working that stays compliant with these localization needs.
great. No, that's really great. And, I'm sure you're an inspiration to everybody watching. So, just looking back a little bit at your journey, is there anything you would do differently? Or is there any advice you would give architects stepping into, large scale multi cloud implementations?
Absolutely, definitely. When I started, I didn't have the kind of exposure that I see right now available. So for me, one thing that I would have done differently, maybe a decade ago, would have been started my publishing, the journey a little earlier. I spent a lot of time noting down, writing these technical design documents, but they never really made out of my day-to-day work, or they never really went out of the system that I was in. And now in retrospectively, when I look back, I understand there was so much of pattern knowledge that accumulated over different implementation, but it was very privately held. These were repeatable patterns that could have been implemented across different, size and scale of implementations. So then, when I started publishing them as case studies or publishing them as how I did it in a particular manner, I started understanding and the scale of and the value that it was providing for people who were sitting across the bench and who had not had the access of the information that I had earlier, or the way a certain problem could have been solved. So in terms of the advice, I would be very uh, candid in the essence that if there's any professional or a Salesforce practitioner, in terms of it doesn't matter where they are in their career journey, whether they are beginners or they've already spent few years around, if they plan to step into a large scale multi-cloud rollouts, I would advise them to get comfortable very quick. Get comfortable for making decisions that will be under heavy uncertainty faster. Uh, Take the time that you need to identify which uncertainties will block you and which uncertainties you can live with, and start tackling those uncertainties first, which you know will are going to be blocking. So the skill differentiator is knowing which uncertainties are acceptable to carry forward and which ones do you need to absolutely resolve before you proceed. uh, Simply being, the scale and the magnitude of these programs when you're working with such different engagements, and the nature and the scale with the geography, sometimes you have more than 1 lakh users who are logging into your system. You may not have all the answers, or you may not have all the information at the time of starting. A lot of these things evolve as you move forward. So get comfortable as quick as you can. Start being comfortable with the uncertainty, start being comfortable with answering hard questions, and also asking hard questions right at the beginning.
I think that's superb advice. Thank you for that. I'm sure everyone watching will be delighted to hear that. So, just bringing it down now to sort of some personal insights and some community, the community side of it, because you are so actively involved, with Supermums community, with Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, Experience Cloud. You're one of our, we're so grateful to have our community champions, and and we really appreciate you. So, has being part of the community shaped your career in any way, and if it has, why is that important to you?
Oh, such a lovely question, Lynn. Absolutely, it has, hands down. There's no two way about it. Specifically because you called out how the community has shaped uh, my involvement. And I was new to UK as an ecosystem. My early years of working in Salesforce were from India. I started my career in India, and I moved to UK. I did not have the kind of professional network that I'd built back in India. So while Salesforce was a familiar territory, but the network and the professionals around me were not. So the Supermoms came in a place where it was just the right timing. I wanted to contribute in the community, but I had no idea how do I do it. And that's when I was reached out to be a mentor, and I said, yes, this is what I wanted, and let's do it. And the more I started engaging with the community through Supermoms, I see that there are a lot of people, a lot of professional, a lot of career returning women who are in that journey that I was many years ago, and who are navigating the same set of questions that I did not have anybody to ask when I was in their position. So for me, that became a driving factor and a motivation. It helps give you a tremendous sense of belonging when you have somebody who's sharing your journey in terms of your background, in terms of your struggle, who's done the things that you're trying to do. The path feels a little less daunting, and it becomes a little bit more navigable. It feels like you can do it if you had the right tools, if you had access to the right things to do. So if me being more vocal, visible, and sharing my certain experiences, or the challenges that I went through, it makes me help anybody else going through the same questions, to to give them an assurance that this is navigable, you can do it, and it's possible. There are people like me who's gone through the same things that you have, so probably you will go further than that, further than I have, and hopefully that's an investment worth making.
I think, a couple of things that you've said that I've picked out, I think everyone I speak to, says exactly the same as you, including me. I absolutely wish that I'd got into this a lot sooner. And I think it's it is a superb community to be part of, as you say. And I think for those, who are watching today, who are interested in moving into the Salesforce architecture or working across multiple clouds, what would be one last piece of advice would you give to those?
Oh, brilliant. I'll give the advice that I didn't get, but I ended up following unconsciously. I would suggest go deep in one industry before you go broad, before you explore all the offerings of Salesforce. Stick to one industry. If you're starting with education cloud, stick to the education industry. If you're starting with contact center rollout, then stick to the customer service segment industry. For me personally, the most interesting work that I've done is when I was speaking the language that the business was speaking.
Yeah.
So it helps bridge the gap. It helps me be a better architect. For example, if I'm working with an financial services insurance sector team or a business, then that means when I'm walking into the room, I'm speaking the language that they also speak. It gives them an understanding that yes, there's a person in the room who knows the platform, who also understands the business that we are dealing with, and it just makes the team effort worthwhile. It gets the right questions across the room without having any friction, and the overall approach of setting up Salesforce for success becomes a target that's very much easier to achieve. The
Yeah.
second advice for me would be not to wait until you feel ready to contribute. Like I took a long time to get to a place where I started noting down my learnings and in terms of articles, and then having a conversation with my mentees to share it, or to create even a template or a paper that outlines what questions should we ask. The knowledge that we have right now, or the problems that we solve, the mistakes we are making, may be valuable to somebody who will be in your position 6 months later. So it's crucial that we have all of these conversations that happen, that get shared into a platform where it's visible and accessible for others who are just tuning in, or others who are contemplating whether this is a right fit for them. And Supermom is doing exactly that. So thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome. And, Bhumika, thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for sharing your insights. It's been really, I'm sure, for everybody watching, it's been incredibly valuable to hear about your experience, working across multiple clouds, within regulated industries. And I'm sure that the audience today have had some really, insightful insights from you. And, genuinely, we do really appreciate what you do. So thank you so much for everything you do for Supermums, the mentoring, the community champions, everything you're doing. And, if you've taken anything from today, I'm going to put Bhumika's LinkedIn into the chat so that you can find her, and maybe connect with her as well, because it's always nice. As Bhumika said, connection is everything. Keeping yourself relevant, keeping yourself up to date. But once again, thank you for everyone that's joined us today. We'll be back next week with another community champion. So have a great evening, have a great day, depending on where you're based. And once again, thank you so much for joining us today, Bhumika.
Thank you. Before we go, just one last bit.
Yeah, go.
I want to give a shout out to you, Lynn and Heather, for making something as beautiful as Supermoms. I'm tremendously grateful the work that you guys do as a team, and the team that's behind you, everyone that I've interacted since I started as a mentor last year. They've been phenomenal. Whatever offerings that you've given, the kind of support you are giving to the mentees has been absolutely rewarding. Every time I speak to someone, the first thing that they have to mention is they find an environment which is so inclusive. And I think that sort of takes a lot of edge and pressure away from stepping into a tech role after a break. So massive cheers to you and Heather and the Supermoms team.
Thank you. And, again, we appreciate you as much as you appreciate us, which is the beauty of community, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much. And we've met twice in person, so hopefully I'll see you again soon. So
yes, soon, yes.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.